Hello and welcome to Founders Unplugged. I am your host, Greg McCallum, also known as the Pay-As-You-Scale Commercial Advisor. Before we start, just wanted to let you know all these conversations are completely voluntary by the founders who are involved. So please give them some love. There's very busy individuals and they're taking up to 2 hours out of their day to come and sit and chat with me about themselves, about their businesses, and about all other kinds of stuff. Look in the description on whatever platform you're watching this and you will find links to them for their LinkedIn profiles and also the projects and the startups they're working on. So do go and check those out. And while you're at it, maybe give me a bit of love too. I do this as something on the side to my main business. I run a company called ThinkWork. And so if you're looking for any advice, I also do free commercial advice for those for up to 1 hour. That job allows me to do this. Thank you so much. Enjoy the episode. Please do show love and appreciation for them. And of course, for this episode, if you enjoy it, like it, subscribe, share. Without further ado, I've talked long enough. Enjoy the episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum.
Just a quick disclaimer before this episode starts. Usually these are one long recording, unedited. That's kind of the gimmick. But unfortunately, we did have some tech issues and some connectivity issues with this particular episode. So there will be some edits. So sorry about that in advance, but enjoy the episode.
Coming in, so I didn't want her to make lots of noise in the background. So I thought this would be the best place.
Yeah, well, look, you've got to make do in tough situations. It's tough life, but
yeah, tough life.
Yeah. So yeah, how's things been since we last spoke?
Good. Yeah, good. I mean, I'm getting married on Saturday, so I'm super stressed. I am learning that I am like probably one of the most organised people in my family,
Right.
and everybody else leaves everything to the last minute. So
Yeah. I think I had a similar discovery at our wedding. I was like, really, you guys haven't sorted out how to get there. You haven't, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's quite surprising, isn't it? But I think it's also because it's your day. Obviously, if it was their day, they would probably be just as organised, right?
Maybe, but do you know what you think? Like, I've literally grown up in the same environment as you, and we've got the same, like, similar mindsets. Like, why? And my mum's super organised, but she just leaves it. Like, I don't know why. Like, maybe it's like as she's grown older.
I've noticed that with my mum. So like she gives less of a shit, basically. Yeah. Like, so she is an incredibly organized person, like, very, savvy, business minded, a great leader, all of this sort of stuff. But when it comes to things now in general, she'll be like, I'll be there, between 1 and 5. You know what I mean? Yeah. She just doesn't care. She's told me before. She's like, I've spent my whole life stressing and worrying. Why should I worry now? I'm like, fair enough. You've earned it.
Yeah. I get that.
Must be what it is. But yeah, wedding plans coming along all right.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
You say you're stressed, but hopefully you're also feeling rather excited, I imagine.
I am super excited. I am hoping that I've now done everything that I need to do. Yeah. But the main thing is it's like service providers or the venue coming back to us and asking us like, oh, we need this from you, and it's like, you could have asked me this like 6 months ago, rather than the week before.
Are you doing outdoor, indoor, bit of both?
So logistically, it's a little bit more of a challenging wedding because we are getting married in a church in central London, off Great Portland Street, and then we get a coach to Teddington, and then we're getting the reception is in a place called the Lensbury. And we've got like a private outdoor decking area and an inside option. So, I mean, the weather's supposed to be really lovely and hot. So it'll be lovely to have people. And we've got like a gin garden and things like that, which will be cool.
Wow, I've never heard of one of those. It sounds like a very difficult thing to keep pruning. And yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so so it should be lovely. And we've already had the complaints from the guys saying, "Do I have to wear a tux?" Yes, you do.
Brilliant. Have you guys done the sort of traditional stag and hen do's? Because I know that they're sort of falling out of favour. They're not as popular these days.
I do. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's totally like blown out of proportion, like hen and stag do's. I think they are a little bit ridiculous. I was very lucky in a sense to have like a long weekend. It was a bank holiday weekend, and we did it mostly in London because we had people traveling from all parts of the UK. So the central base was London. So that was lovely. And I would say mine was a bit more humbler than kind of what a lot of people are used to now. My partner's, on the other hand, was not humble. He went to Portugal and surfed and played sports and barbecues and
but at least it sounds semi-cultural, right, as opposed to just go to a nightclub and get smashed for a couple of days or whatever.
He was smashed.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, but but at least there's surfing involved and this and that, you know what I mean? It could have very easily just got smashed, slept in, got smashed again, you know what I mean? And that's what a lot of people do. It's not particularly memorable. Exactly.
Style stag do.
That doesn't appeal to me at all. For my stag do, it wasn't really a stag do. It was just literally a night out with my two very closest friends and my brother. We went to Brighton. It's just down the road. We actually went out very early in the day, originally, and sort of did a bit of shopping and stuff. Picked up a few bits and pieces, had a bite to eat, had a few drinks, and we were in bed by like 12. It was just nice to catch up because I don't see them that often. So it was just more than anything. I was like, I'd rather remember tonight if that's okay. So, but anyway, we haven't really done the proper structure of this podcast yet, so we might as well. So not that there is much. All I really like to do more than anything, actually, at the beginning, is just ask my guests to introduce themselves, because we've just jumped straight in. But of course, anyone listening right now is probably like, well, who the hell are these people? So we should probably do that. So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself and introduce your business, or in your case, businesses. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'd appreciate it.
Cool. So my name is Rosaria Barreto, and I'd like to think that I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have run 3 businesses. I'm 26 years old, and I am currently working on building a web-based platform, which is focused on older adults to find and access suitable group exercise programs, either online, in person, or in a one-to-one setting. So that's my business. It's called Mature Movers. And then, as you know now, I'm getting married at the weekend, and I am about to go to the Amalfi Coast for my honeymoon.
Oh wow, beautiful! How long for?
We're going for 10 nights because I have to go to a hen party in Marbella. Straight from Naples,
Of course. Again, tough life, but these things have to be done.
I'm super lucky. I mean, I grew up in a very working class family. I'm one of 9 children.
Wow.
So it was
Christmas must be a nightmare.
I mean, it's getting better now. We're a bit older. But so I mean, like at one point in our life, I think it was like 6 children in 1 bedroom, kind of thing. So we've been really like taught to appreciate the value of money and the value of good things and good times. And I think that kind of feeds into my drive, because I really like the champagne lifestyle. And I know what it's like to not have the ability to just say, oh, I want to go and do this. Because there were times in our lives that we couldn't do that because we didn't have money, or we didn't have the opportunities available to us. So,
no, I can. It's interesting because of my my child. I don't really talk about myself too much on these things. Obviously, it's not about me, but it just made me think about. I was very fortunate growing up. So, between about the ages of up to about 5. My parents were still together, and my father had a very successful business, and my mother was actually helping with it. And we had a huge house, and for always at least 3 or 4 foreign students living with us. It was like an 8-bedroom house, really nice. But it was really all right. And so I recognized we were well off. Right, we were definitely well off. We were upper working class because my dad was a builder. He was by no means, anything other than working class. But then they divorced, and a few years following that, everything got scaled back, right? Obviously, like, suddenly the business is gone, money's tight. My mum's now a single mum, and it's all stripped back. We moved into a very, very small house. We're no longer going on lavish holidays. And it was, in some ways, I'm kind of grateful of that because it made me sort of, although I was quite young to remember too much about what it was like in the bigger house and that lifestyle, I do remember some things. Do you know what I mean? And I think that for me, similar to you, it's like I've experienced that at some point. It was lovely, but I equally understand how fragile that is, right? And that's the thing, isn't it? And that, what I always say to people, I even told my son this the other day, I say money is the easiest thing to get a hold of. It's the hardest thing to keep, because it is everywhere, but it's very, very difficult to keep. Yeah. But
I love that mindset. I think that's really key, because I think also growing up where money is a massive consideration, you can also go the opposite way in the sense that money is really, really hard to come by. Yeah. And I think that can be really, really detrimental to a person's mental health, because it's like this constant worry, like we're never gonna have money, or we're not gonna have money, or like I have to like kill myself to be able to afford this kind of thing.
In some cases that is literally a viable option for people that they decide to choose, which is horrendous to say, but that is what they decide to do because of insurance, to provide for their family. I think society has a massive responsibility there, and I think there's two elements to it, two main elements. There's lots of elements, but two main elements in the sense that you have people who really, really, really work hard. They have to really think about where their spending is and all of those things, and they have to live quite a disciplined lifestyle. And then you also have the people who are in a very similar situation, but they don't appreciate the value of money. And I think that's that influencer lifestyle approach where you don't actually have the money to spend, but you're spending it anyway. And I see my friends living like that. And but the mindset is interesting, because the difference between the two is, one is like money comes, money goes, and then, or money goes, money comes. And then the other is I have to be super, super careful with spending money. And I can see the negative elements and the positive elements of both of them. I don't know where I'm going with this. No, I see what you mean. I think there's potentially sort of another mindset to that, which is, and you know what, the common thread between all of these conversations I have is always the one word: balance, right? And I think there is a balance between those mindsets, which is, keep a hold of it, don't let go of it, be a bit tight, be really considerate about where you spend your money. Obviously that's just a bit of common sense, right? Just be a bit careful, but at the same time you do have to let go a little bit. If you work hard for it, then enjoy it, right? So it's about finding that balance. But it's kind of like, I always use the comparison of going to the casino. You don't go to the casino with money you can't afford to lose, in the same way that you shouldn't be going on holiday if you can't afford to lose it, right? If it's going to stress you out later after the fact, then it's a pointless holiday, right? But the mindset of money is the easiest thing in the world to come by, but the hardest thing to keep is like you said, there are, I think, people out there with that mindset of, money is impossible to get. I can't get money. And that's just couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is you need to find a way of getting it, because it's everywhere. And that's for the exact same reason why it's so easy to get, but so hard to keep. Because by that logic, everyone's trying to take your money. Right? So so you can take everyone else's, it's just, it moves around, But,
I mean, I've had to really work on my money mindset as an individual, because I used to be extremely worried about spending money, super, super worried. And that definitely comes from my environment growing up. And I didn't want to live like that anymore. And so what I did is I learned so much about like money mindset and like how to let go of that worry and things like that. And something that really, really changed and was a really impactful moment was when I was listening to a podcast, and it was talking about how money is just energy, and we put in energy to get the money. So like the energy we put in, we get back through money. So, and the money that we give back then has you're giving energy back to kind of wherever it came from. And that extraction of energy everywhere, and like just letting go and not thinking of money as just like money, and thinking of it as a extraction of energy, really. And it's really hard. I find it quite challenging to explain how I understand it, but
I think I know what you mean. I often the way I look at money is actually the exchange of time. That's how I often look at it, which I suppose in some ways is kind of two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
Because of time is the usually you use the time, right, in a particular way. So it's the exertion of energy or effort or whatever, or the desire not to exert energy, right, or effort. But yeah, I see what you mean by that, and I think it's a good way to picture it in our mind's eye. The thing that I think is really problematic with money mindsets as well is the fact that we don't, and I know this is kind of cliche to say, but I mean it in a bit more of a comprehensive way, that we don't teach enough about it in school. But more than just finance, like actually sort of giving children a purpose of because let's we all know that in adult life, if you don't have purpose, things can be rather difficult. And you look at teenagers especially, like they're kind of stuck in limbo. They're seeing, like you said, all of this influencer lifestyle. They're seeing, or maybe they want to be an entrepreneur, or maybe they just want to get to work down the car shop or be a footballer or whatever, but they have to be in school. So they're kind of stuck in this limbo of like, what's my purpose? And I think the problem is we're not being clear enough. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, your purpose right now is to learn. That's your purpose. You know what I mean? Because we're instead telling them you need to be ready for the world, and it's like, well, am I ready? Like, when am I doing it? You know what I mean? It's like, it's
well, you need to be ready to make money, and like I don't think that's what purpose is. And I think that is a huge pressure that schools put on children. You're essentially learning to make money, which is not true. You're learning to live, and the way that you deal with that learning can then impact your way of life.
Learning how to interact with the world around you, essentially.
And I was going to say something. I volunteer at entrepreneurial business days at my secondary school that I used to go to.
Oh wow.
And I've given talks, and I've also done like mock interviews. And a really interesting and frustrating thing that happened last time was you're given a booklet, and the pupils, they choose a job, essentially a fake job to interview for. So it could be like a plumber, it could be a lawyer, it could be an accountant. And it was exactly those very, very traditional jobs that a lot of the young people just didn't relate to at all. And I made a comment at the end. I said all of these jobs are the same list of jobs that I had when I was doing my mock interviews at this school. So that's 10 years later, and they haven't changed. And the world is a completely different place, and young people have things like digital marketing and all of these new jobs that are emerging on a weekly basis, but also like post-pandemic. And it's also super, super accessible now to have jobs that aren't your kind of traditional route through education. And I think that plays a massive part on, sorry, I've got an airplane going over. That plays a huge part in life purpose, money motivation, and like well-being.
I think to some extent as well, it also plays a really huge part into trust, right? In the sense of like, if you're a kid, you're a teenager, you're going through all of the things that you're going through, which we already know is a whirlwind of emotion and hormones and everything else. And then you're looking at the news, and then this and that and everything else. And then you effectively find out that your school that's meant to be preparing you for life, allegedly, is so out of touch that they're doing that. You're not going to trust anything that comes out of their mouth in relation to how to conduct yourself in the business world. Like, you're just not. And that's, I think that's legitimately what's happening, and why you see absolute disengagement from the educational system with a vast majority of children, because they're not stupid. They are on their phones, they are on the internet, they can see the world around them. You just need to walk outside and look at the world, and you can very clearly see the disconnect between what's being taught at schools at certain stages and the real world. And they're just looking at it and going, you have no idea what you're talking about. You know what I mean? I'm going to figure this out by myself. And that's a huge problem, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that that your foray into entrepreneurship was like just by the very nature of having to start businesses and run businesses was probably the biggest lesson for you, for your sort of mindset as in regards to money and managing money?
What do you mean? Expand on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, so for me personally, running my first business when I was younger was probably the biggest teaching moment for me regarding money mindset, because there was this perception when I was a kid and as a young adult that businesses are always making money, they always are profitable. There's always money in the bank. That that if you run a business, you're secure. And then the realization comes, it's like, oh, money management, right? There's runway. There's we have a moment. We have a couple of months, and you're always living, a few months. You know what I mean? It's like it just suddenly makes you realize a little bit more about the reality of business. Did you find a similar sort of thing, and how and it sort of affected the way you see that now?
I know that I didn't study business studies at school, and I never knew that I wanted to run my own business until I went to university. And then at university, I did a sports science degree combined with a business management degree. And but even during that degree, I was never taught about money. I was always taught about sales and marketing and kind of the theory of business. And then I left university, and I knew immediately I wanted to start my own business. So I worked part-time in a private school coaching athletic development, and part-time starting up essentially a personal training business for people with chronic health conditions. And I didn't have any income. Obviously at this point I'd graduated. I had worked part-time during uni, but that funded kind of my other uni elements. So I had no initial capital. So luckily within 6 months I was getting busy enough to actually stop my part-time job and then go full-time focusing on my business. But at that point my money mindset was very much like what I would call stingy,
right?
In a sense,
I haven't heard that word for a while. Stingy, that's a good word.
I wasn't willing to spend money to make money, and it's taken me a good 4 years to really understand what that means. And I think people can just be like, you have to spend money to make money, and without really thinking about it, you get one extreme where it's like spending so much money that you actually can never make that back. Or the other end, which was me, and I was just not willing to spend any money on developing the company and things like that. And then I changed my money mindset, and with that came the ability to spend money on my company and to spend money on development. And as soon as you get rid of that worry, then it really changes your ability to grow and scale a company, in my opinion. There were a few other things. I should bring a notepad with me to write down my points.
I always say that I'm sat at my desk, I don't have a notepad in sight, and I always think I should probably do it because I think of questions, then I forget them and all sorts. Yeah. But it keeps it more organic, so it's fine.
Yeah, no, you're right. So yeah, I mean, I've learned so much in the last 5 years, which is how long I've been running my own business, about you go into running a company really, really naively. And I think that there's a massive positive to that, because you have these huge ambitions, and you kind of feel a little bit what's the word, like you can take on the world, you can you're undefeated, and
ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. I spoke about this with someone recently on this show as well, about how we talked about how if they had known the challenges that were ahead of them before they decided to start their company, they never would have done it. And it's a fact. I think it is important to be young, ambitious, and completely dumb to a lot of what's involved in running a company. Otherwise, you just wouldn't bother.
I think, and I'm just gonna, because I run a pro-aging company, and you use the word young. It's really interesting, and usually, kind of in the space that I work in, like using the words young and old can be seen as discriminative. But I understand exactly what you mean by being young in business, because you are naive, and I don't think that you can be as naive if you have wisdom behind you, and that comes with age. And I think that that's like a key element to starting a business. And I mean, I went straight from graduating university to starting my business because I thought that would be the best option at that time in my life. I didn't have anything really to lose. Like at that point in my life, I didn't have any children. I didn't have a mortgage to pay. I didn't have kind of really important things that I needed to consider when starting a business.
Yeah.
Whereas when you are a little bit older, you have more experience, you have a lot more to consider, and I think
a lot more risk.
Yeah, a lot more risk, and it can be a huge barrier to one, starting a business, but also to really committing to running a business. I see a lot of parents in particular start businesses, but they can't really reach the level of financial freedom that they want, because they are also they also have to take care for a family. They're the primary caregivers, and things like that. So I think from a personal perspective, I was extremely blessed to start my own company when I did. I do now, only recently in the last 5 years, think, and I don't know if this was really an opportunity back then, but it was never something that came to my knowledge or my awareness, was to go and work for a startup company. And I really think I would have really benefited from working either in like with a venture capitalist firm or within a startup company, to really understand how it works, the structure, the terminology, all of those things, because I think that would have really set me apart and also given me a bit more perspective, because now I'm at a point where I'm like, I really wish I knew that, or like I really wish I was a bit more confident in this area of fundraising, for example. But I'm having to learn as I grow, which, like most other entrepreneurs and business owners, you do have to, you're always learning. It's like constant learning experience, but I feel like I have to learn a little bit harder now, because I rushed into starting a business, and essentially, like, I had probably quite a negative mindset around age, and thinking like, oh gosh, I'm only 20 at that point. I'm only 22 and I haven't achieved this. And that's society putting that pressure on me to be like it's that whole, I don't know if I 100% agree like with the Forbes 30 under 30 list, because I appreciate like rapid success in a way, because like obviously it's hard work, but when it comes to rapid success, I also think a lot of it is luck. And and whereas like you'll have people who've been working on businesses and learning and growing, and they reach that like that next level, what you call like traditional understanding of success, in their 50s or 60s. But that's not necessarily as praised as somebody who's under 30 and has achieved the same level of success.
No, it's not, is it? But I think there's a good reason for that. I mean, like, yes, while I agree, there's a heavy dose of luck in any business sort of success, if you want to call it that. That there is equally, this I mean, I don't think really luck is not without you making it sort of happen. You have to create it to a degree. You have to put yourself in situations where you're a bit more open to what you receive, right, in order to come across many chances. Like, for example, one of the reasons why I love offering my sort of pro bono sessions is because of it affords me the opportunity to meet, like you, some amazing people, and that can sometimes result in some really like fortuitous situations. So it's like, oh, I'm working on this. We're working on this. Like we should, and by any stretch, someone on the outside, well, that's lucky. So no, it's not. Like I created that scenario in order for that to occur.
Yeah.
But then in relation to the age thing, you're right that we don't celebrate that enough. But I do kind of understand it. It's because it's the outlier. It's what's interesting. It has appeal. And in some ways, I suppose it's probably more useful for the 30 euro and unders to have that sort of that exposure, because it's probably more useful for them than it is the 50-plus-year-old. You know what I mean? Like
I don't know.
I don't know, not always, but
yeah, I don't know. I think I disagree with that in a sense that I think age shouldn't have anything to do with anything.
But it does, though.
It does, and
it has a lot to do with things. Like let's call a spade a spade. Like it is what it is. Like it has a huge effect. In the same way that we can't ignore the fact that someone under the age of like 25 or even 21. There's still a lot happening biologically. There's just at different age points. There's biological changes in the same ways that I think priorities change for a lot of people. But yeah, I was definitely making a generalization, though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, yeah, and I mean, I mean, going back to my main point, it was around the fact that there's so much pressure to achieve at such a young age.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, I mean, you look at a lot of men, like I think the statistics on suicide rates for young men are horrendous. They are ridiculous, and I think that comes down to success pressure or pressure around achieving success as a young man. And I think that's where it's super dangerous to have that expectation of, well, you haven't done this yet and you're 30, or you haven't done this yet and you're like what have you been doing with your life? And I think that mindset is a huge barrier. It can be used as a motivator, yes, but you need it goes back to what you said at the beginning, balance, and acknowledging, yes, I'm going to use this to motivate me, but I'm not going to let it take over my life. And I've experienced that, where I've experienced extreme anxiety and worry and stress and depression around success. And I think that fundamentally comes down to this idea that you need to be able to achieve these 5 things by the time you reach the age of 30. And I see it on a daily basis with my friends and my family, and even with my partner. Like he's like, right, he not anymore because I've persuaded him not to. But I want my first child by the time I'm 30, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I'm not there. I'm in my life, I do not want to have a child yet. I still feel incredibly what's the right word, unready to be responsible for another human being. And I think his mindset around that, achieving that by the time you're 30, which all of his friends have, was something that's been pushed on you from such a young age. To be you need to be able to have a successful job, you need to be earning at least this amount a year, and have a child, and have a mortgage, and all of these things. So yeah,
I had the exact same thing as your fiance. As I was getting closer to 30, I was like, I'm childless. This isn't good. I mean, because then I was starting to think about my fitness levels, and how long will I be, what age will they be when I can do this, and all that sort of stuff. And then like you said, friends around you all having kids, and and I wish I hadn't sort of pressured myself so much on that. You're absolutely right. One thing that really helped me with my mindset around the pressure of success. So aside from family, but that sort of pressure on myself to be successful was, and again, similar to you, really crippling, in terms of the anxiety and depression and everything else. That can, obviously not solely down to that particular thing, but it was definitely a large contributing factor. The one thing that really helped was my shift to viewing my purpose on this planet as being kind of what I alluded to earlier in regards to teenagers, a student, right? And that is what I consider my purpose to be in life. First and foremost, above anything else, I'm a student. I am then a CEO, a founder and CEO. I'm a husband. I'm a father. But number one for me, that's my main purpose, to learn. And I think that's really important. It's not just for a teenager or a kid. It's for everyone because of that. And I think as long as you hold that in at least it works for me. The pressure is never to be successful. It's to be better, right, than I was yesterday. So that's the pressure I give myself, but I think it's a healthy one to some degree.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think ego comes into that around like, oh no, I know everything, and something I'm really working on myself now is like leave the ego at the door, and I mean, my background is like Middle Eastern. I'm the eldest of 9. Like I grew up with a massive ego. Like it's this very like leadership focus, like you are in charge. I know everything, like very, what I would say like an Arab mindset. And the reason I say that is just because all of my family members from my family are like that. It's like very much like, oh, we know everything.
So a lot of confidence.
Extreme confidence, and I think I think there's nothing wrong with extreme levels of confidence. I just think when it crosses over with ego, then it becomes dangerous, and that feeds into your self-doubt. But it also can be a barrier to opportunity. And a really good example is like going to the gym. When you go to a gym where there's like lots of people with extremely high egos, you feel really insecure. You feel really like you lack confidence. And it's a constant battle to be like the best, and you're competing against the other people in the room. Whereas when you let go of that ego, you stop comparing yourself and competing against everyone else, and you just start focusing on yourself. And that's like a key. I think that's a huge thing for an entrepreneur to learn and understand, because if you really understand and believe that, then you go into a room full of other really ambitious people and you light up the room, and you gain much more than you would if you went in with a huge ego, which can be quite threatening to many people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's dangerous, right? So in the sense of like, by using your analogy there of the gym, if you're going in on the assumption that you already know everything, well, you're going to hurt yourself because you're not open to learn how to do something properly, and all others. So it's literally, it can become a very blunt weapon that can hurt those around you. But yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I think that's something to be very mindful of. And again, like to my point about being a student, like that's again why I like doing that approach, because that's a similar thing to me. It's like, keep yourself in check, mate. Yes, you to some degree, others will consider you an expert in that field, but never get comfortable there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm considered by many to be an expert in the commercial space. Great, I really appreciate that. It's very humbling, but I don't consider that to be the case because I've got plenty to learn, right? But I will give out what I know. Have it. It's yours. But I'm still picking it up from here, there, and everywhere, because then I can give more to others. You know what I mean?
That's it. And actually, that's something I've really learned over the last year. Like after the pandemic, I kind of like, my ego is just like, oh my gosh, I'm super successful. Like I like know everything. Like I'm an expert in my area, and like this huge ego, and I felt like really static with my success, because when you reach that peak, you're like, all right, I've achieved my peak. And there's no peak, there's no like level, because there's always more to gain, and there's another peak to climb. And once realizing that and kind of like reining that ego back in, I started to feel so much better, and I started to like see more opportunities. And I then realized like I need to stop just take, and I need to give, because it's that whole energy and like money. Like when you give it, you get it back. And I think that's if I could do like my top 3 like tips for like starting and growing a happy and successful business, one of them would be leave your ego at the door, and the next one would be obviously learning, like continue to learn. And then the third one will be like be generous with your knowledge, because I think when you're generous with your knowledge, you attract people who are going to boost you, who are going to bring opportunities to you, and you just feel happier. Like people love, like I think like, we love to give people things. We love to help people. And if you're doing that on a daily basis, more people are likely to help you, and it's just like a cycle.
I agree, and those are 3 really good tips. I would add a 4th to that, only born out of experience to the same sort of mindset you have, sort of after the fact almost, which is, yes, be generous with your knowledge, but get it verified before you're generous with that knowledge. And the reason why I say that is because I see a lot of people out there, again, mostly young entrepreneurs, giving out, or actually, not just young, also equally old idiots as well, giving out advice and things like that, which is, again, my wheelhouse, what I do, but they aren't vetting it, they aren't getting it verified, they sort of, getting it firsthand very quickly, and then passing it on. And of course, what ends up happening is a lot of bad practice is shared, a lot of bad advice is shared, a lot of misinformation is shared, and these days I think that's more important than ever to just double check things, to double check advice or best practice, and be like, is this actually the best way to do this? Are there other ways of doing it? Because of what you're touching on there in some ways relates to I think it's the Kruger knowledge curve, where you don't know what you don't know, right? So you end up at this sort of little peak on the curve. And as far as you're concerned, it's kind of like that analogy of the cave wall, right, where the shadows are casting in the cave wall. From the perception of being inside the cave, what you see is vastly different from what's outside the cave, but you have no idea because you're ignorant to it. So you don't know. So you're sat there thinking, oh right, yeah, I know all there is to know. The world is as it is being portrayed, in this shadow. But it's only by, I think, doing exactly what you said and actually starting to give out that people will start giving something back and saying, or maybe disagreeing with you. And I think that's actually probably one of the best things that can happen, is someone going, no, you're an idiot. That's terrible advice. Let's talk about it. Let's examine why. And you're like, oh Christ, someone's challenging me. This is great. Because up until that point, if you're just in your little bubble and you just think you're the dog's bollocks, as it were, there's nothing worse than being comfortable, I think.
And I think it's easy to get comfortable. So easy. And then also I think, like, mainly going back to the fact that you were kind of discussing it's just gone out of my head. I can't remember.
It's the sun. It's melting your brain.
It is.
Well, look, in that case, let's take this opportunity. I want to pivot the conversation back towards the business, because tell me more about it. We've already spoken about it. I know what it is, but for the sake of anyone watching or listening, tell me more about Mature Movers. What is it? How does it work? Where did the idea come from?
So, as I briefly mentioned before, when I graduated, I started I'm actually going to start before that. So I was...
When you were born.
On the 22nd of November, 1996. So I was at university, and I was really convinced I was going to be like some sort of elite athlete or coach or something to do with elite sport. Because at that time, that was, I mean, just before that, that was the main kind of route you would go down, like strength and conditioning for elite sport clubs or individual athletes and things like that, if you wanted to kind of make a kind of a very good living in the sports industry. And this is also at the same time that like influencers were becoming becoming an influencer was becoming much more accessible, because even at that point, like if you've ever read Jessica Ennis's biography, like she had to have like a full-time job, also being a heptathlete, and there weren't such things as there were, but they weren't as accessible as like sponsorships and like influencer branding and things like that. So even if you wanted to be an athlete, you still had to have a job. And I sat in this lecture hall and I was learning about, the unit was called Physical Activity Prescription and Promotion. And I just thought like it was all learning about like how the UK is living in an obesity epidemic, and how health conditions, primary cause of health conditions is sedentary living. And it was just a massive wake-up call for me. And I was like, all right, so what's anyone doing about this? So I actually did my dissertation on the UK obesity epidemic and looked into like large-scale strategies that the government were running and things like that. And it was just nothing that was working, and like nothing really available, and it wasn't being prioritized in 2018 as much as it is today. And as a result, I just changed my whole like mindset, and I was like, I don't want to go into elite sport. There are enough people doing this job. I really want to go and help people. I recognize this. I see it in my family. I've got family who live extremely sedentary lives, who've got a plethora of health conditions that they have to deal with on a daily basis, and it's really, really affecting them. And I'm obviously very health orientated. Like I've always played sports, I've always been food conscious, I've always like loved physical activity, and that's why I started my first business. And then luckily, I have no idea. I mean, when the pandemic started, I thought, gosh, I'm not going to be able to help anyone, because it was the most vulnerable group of people. Everyone was super isolated. And at that time, we just started to break into care homes. And obviously, care homes are on complete lockdown. So you couldn't enter care homes, you couldn't work in them, you couldn't have instructors going in and running sessions. And I sort of went into complete panic. But I mean, now I was extremely successful. My company made its highest level of revenue to that date, to that year. And
so how did you overcome not being able to go into care homes? Did you just have to wait it out, or did you find some sort of solution around that?
We kind of went from, so everything before the pandemic was face to face. It was 100% face to face, and then during the pandemic, we went from like, we went to 90% online and then 10% face to face, because we could still work with certain individuals in certain capacities, and as a result, our reach just grew. We just had more reach, and because we could be online, we could work with organizations all around the UK, we could work with individuals all around the UK, and it also, the time that I focused on learning more about the industry and the market, and gaining a better understanding of what we can do to help more people. And during this time, we basically reached max capacity. I couldn't take on any more clients. We couldn't run any more projects. And I thought, like, how can we scale this? Like, how can I scale this? How can I employ more people? What can I do? And I did a crowdfunding campaign to research and invest in developing my initial concept of mature movers, which has drastically changed since about June 2020. So that's what I did. I just learned, I understood the market, delved more into retirement living and how we can focus on the opportunities there. And then over time, I've just really come up with lots of different ideas of how to access more people, how to help more people. Done obviously competitor analysis, realised there's nobody doing what we do in the UK, and if they are in a similar position and they unable to scale. So without kind of giving away too much information, because we're obviously in quite a key point where we're looking for investors, and there's lots of opportunities, and we want to be essentially the first movers in the market in the UK, because there are companies that have scaled that are doing very similar things in the States and Australia, but the UK just hasn't got there yet. So we're helping older adults find and access physical activity services quick and easy, essentially, which at this point in time is so challenging. I still on a daily basis get inquiries to utilize our services all across the UK, and we have to turn people down because we don't have the foundational structure to be able to meet their needs. And that's what I'm investing in. That's what Mature Movers is all about. It's about being able to offer those people a solution to their needs. And the way to do that is, I mean, a huge question I get from investors and people that find out about Mature Movers is, oh, but don't you think that that age group, I literally had a panel where I was pitching for some grant funding last week, and one of the questions which I always get is, oh, but what about do you think that this group is like digitally savvy enough to be using a solution like this? And we're I think younger people, there are definitely people that wouldn't be able to utilize a web-based platform within the age group that we're targeting, but that's not a very big amount of people. It's a minority, and we're not targeting every single older adult in the UK. We're targeting a specific group of people that are tech savvy, that are motivated to improve their physical health, that want to be more physically active, that are in the over 60 age category, and that is a majority. And we're working on ways to make it extremely user friendly, so that, and the whole key element and one of our unique selling points is the fact that it's quick and easy, and it's not spending hours and hours and hours, which people don't want to do, researching local solutions to their physical health needs. And then there's a massive opportunity there to work within public health as a solution to physical activity, because there are lots of very small groups in councils and districts and charities offering amazing work to help people be more physically active, but they don't have the reach, or they don't have the means to be able to really help a lot of people. Like we were in that position, we get it, but now I have the ability and also the mindset and the experience and the ambition to change that. So there's a lot going on, and it's really exciting. But yeah, that's basically what Mature Movers is and what I'm doing.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a really important thing. What's interesting there is what you said as well about the question that you get. There was a business I was working with, I can't remember which one it was now, a little while back, where that was a similar sort of question that was brought up from investors for the offering. And it's not actually as big a deal as people make it out to be. We've got to bear in mind there's been quite a few years since the introduction of a lot of this technology, and I think one of the contributing factors to making older generations a lot more tech literate as well was COVID, because like you said, the fact that the adoption rate for online, it was forced change, and so a lot of people become a lot more familiar with things like video conferencing and that sort of thing as a result, or even just how to navigate a little bit more on a platform for shopping online and this, that, and the other. So it's interesting that that's still a question that you get.
Yeah, but, and that number of people is never going to decrease. Do you know what I mean? It's just going to grow. Like the more time goes by, the more users will have access to, or larger the target market will become, because
exactly, because we'll all get old one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but then the technology might be vastly more advanced, but maybe we will be struggling.
But then I see it as a great opportunity, because we're like first time movers to the market. We're establishing ourselves quite early on, and there will be I don't know what the word is, a digital intellectual difference between age, I think, like constantly. That's never going to
change. Like a technical literacy sort of difference almost.
Between like I know a lot less than a 12-year-old who has access to games and I don't chat GPT and
but it's a different kind of literacy, isn't it? I mean, because if they equally, would have no idea how to use Adobe software or Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, and you know what I mean. Like there's and a ton of other platforms that we have to use day to day in running a business. For accountancy, for finance, for sales and marketing. So I mean, like it's just a different type of literacy, really.
Yeah,
but in terms of
everyone's got to learn it. And I mean, video conferencing is just growing, and it's becoming more.
Hello again.
Hi, Greg. I'm really sorry about that.
That's all right. No worries.
What's going on today?
It might be. Are you using a laptop?
Yeah.
It might be overheating. Maybe.
I did think that, but it's not in the sun, and it doesn't feel like potentially hotter than usual. So I don't. I hope it is potentially overheating, because then it's not another issue that I have to figure out. But yeah, no. So hopefully it doesn't happen again. But you might have to do some editing.
Yeah, I'll do some editing. Don't worry. But yeah, so obviously you mentioned that you're fundraising at the moment. So tell me a bit more about that. What is it that you're seeking? When are you closing the round? Give us a bit more information, like, for any of the investors watching.
So, when I entered this whole fundraising thing, it's the first time I'm doing it. I've had to really learn about fundraising, and I thought it's going to be pretty straightforward. It's that whole naive thing again, of like going in and being like, oh yeah, this will be fun. But it is a real struggle, and sometimes I just feel like I'm by myself, and I'm the only one that's struggling with this whole fundraising thing. And then I go to a networking event which is focused on fundraising, and everyone's in the same position. So I'm like, okay, it's not just me. So the round is, off the top of my head, I'm very wedding focused at the moment. So was supposed to close in October. However, that will be delayed. One, because of the changes in the SEIS legislation. So that came into effect in April. However, it hasn't gone through, and it won't go through probably until July. So for anyone listening that doesn't know, the cap was £150,000, and now it's 250,000, based on those changes that were made. And I think it's also an extension of 3 years instead of 2 years. The business needs to be running. So that really benefits me. So I'm waiting for that to be able to kind of get the advance assurance for that. I'm currently working with Seed Legals on all of those elements. So they've said, let's wait till July. So waiting till July to get the advanced assurance. So that's delayed everything already. Getting married, I knew that was happening, so that hasn't delayed it massively, but it has.
Such a pain, isn't it? No?
These weddings
couldn't be worse timing.
And so in terms of the close, I have to reassess that when I get back, and when my mind is in a better place, and I can really focus on it. How much? £500,000. Which I'm also looking to partially grant fund, so not all angel investment, mainly for an equity perspective. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm hoping to find out about some money potentially being invested at the end of the month. So fingers crossed. And I'm looking forward to when I have built a multi-million-pound company. Well, when Mature Movies is a multi-million-pound company, and I have experienced what fundraising is, and I can do it again and with a better understanding of it. And I do think that this is a little bit more challenging, just because I'm constantly learning, which I expected. But like you think you become kind of like you have like a certain level of expertise in this field of running a business, and then an investor asks you for a one-pager, and you're like, I've been doing this for months and no one's ever asked me for a one-pager. So then you have to go away and create a one-pager, because then you're like, well, what's the point of the pitch deck? It's a constant learning experience. I think we briefly spoke about this in another meeting, about how the fact that it's literally sales and marketing when it comes to fundraising, which was really actually a refreshing way of approaching it. And instead of me looking at it as like, oh, this is not something I've ever done before, like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm actually looking at it as, oh, it's just sales and marketing. I've done this before. I know how to do this. And it's a massitive mindset change. And
what is sales and marketing? It's the ability to communicate effectively. An idea, personality, to build rapport, to get on with people. Like, so, when you really boil it down, it's just relationship building. Because I think that there's a bit of a misconception with a lot of new founders, let's say, when they explore into fundraising for the first time, that they need to know everything, that they will be found out as, as a fraud if they don't go into these meetings knowing everything about finance and fundraising and how VCs work and this, that, and the other. And the truth is, investors don't give a shit about that. They really don't. What they care about is that you're a good human being, that you've got drive, you've got ambition, that you are the one that's going to make this business successful, that you're a good bet, right? And what you don't know, they'll very happily teach you. Obviously you need to have a general understanding of it, in the sense of like, because that makes you more likely to succeed, because you have that general understanding. So that's tied with that. But they don't expect you to know it to the level of an investor. And at the end of the day, that's also what legal advice is for, or financial advice is for on a founder end. You bring in professionals when the time comes to plug in those knowledge gaps, and then you learn as you go. And truthfully, you don't need to learn all of it. Like, you could decide to retain as much as possible and learn everything if you have the ambition to, maybe later in your career, like you said, do it again, or maybe get involved in being an investor yourself. And so for that reason, but ultimately just focus on being a founder. Like, that's the best advice I always give to people. What advice would you give to anyone out there who's maybe looking to enter into raising for the first time?
I think going back to the whole ego thing is really important. Like, you go into it thinking you know everything, because you won't, and you'll learn. And also, if you pretend to know everything, people don't like, it doesn't resonate with people.
People know. Yeah.
And I feel like I had to try and pretend to know everything. Like, I don't make things up, but I would get really panicky because I'm like, like in my head, I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know that. Like, they're gonna hate me. It's like that internal devil voice where it's like, oh, you're not worth it. You're not good enough. It's that whole idea of thinking
just wing it.
You're not smart enough. You don't know enough. So my biggest tip would be go in and be yourself. And if you don't know something, just ask. Like, just be like, oh, I'm really sorry, I don't know what that means. And that's something I'm getting more confident at. It doesn't happen overnight. It's like, okay, stop, just have a breather, ask the question again, or just say, I'm not 100% confident in that area of whatever it is you're discussing.
Say, I'm new to this. This is the first time I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I don't know what that means. Could you explain it to me? Or I'll find out and get back to you. All of those are completely viable answers. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So that would be my number one. And then my number two would to be like, don't put so much pressure on yourself to achieve a certain amount of money by a certain date, because I had that in my head, and like, so much happens during the fundraising process, that you have to adapt to the environment, you have to adapt to your business, you have to adapt to the people that you're talking to, and it's not an easy road. It's super bumpy, and putting too much pressure on yourself is never going to be a good outcome. It's never going to do anything positive for yourself. You need to be disciplined, and you need to have a structure and a strategy 100%, but don't internalize that pressure on yourself, like you're the reason that this hasn't, like, you haven't achieved this, you're the problem here. The world works in such mysterious ways, and I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, and it happens when it happens for a reason. So it is just one of those things that every founder will have a different experience. And I'm currently doing the Barclays Funding Readiness Program with Capital Enterprise, and they do meetup events where they have panels, and they have like previous founders who have raised and exited, or are in the process of raising, like a round B or something like that. So, and what I've learned from that is everybody has the same worries. We're all kind of wired similarly, and although the experience is completely different, we're going through very similar things, even at different stages. So if you're a pre-seed compared to like Series C, like you're like, it's so diverse but so similar. And that's a really hard thing to explain unless you've talked to people and other founders in the industry. And something that's just quickly come to mind is networking is, I think, the key to fundraising, and I didn't know that at the beginning. That wasn't made clear to me, or maybe I didn't understand it 100%. But networking, it's not just about like meeting somebody who's going to invest in your company. It's also about nurturing relationships, because that person might be able to help you in the future. It's not necessarily like right at this point now. And they also might know someone who knows someone. So I think that if you understand that networking is the key to raising investment, your strategy, and you implement that into your strategy, the process will be a little bit less challenging.
I think that's really good advice. That, it kind of goes back to what we said earlier about giving without expectation, right? And I think that's what good networking is, not in this sort of, I think a lot of people, if they haven't done any sort of business networking before, their perception of it is very much like, oh, hi, how are you? What do you do for a living? Okay, how can you benefit me today? And, how can I benefit you today? It's not like that. It's not at all transactional. It's or at least good networking events aren't. Then it's more, like you said, really going in without expectation, and to try and really be as helpful as possible, I think is actually the best. To be offering out, how can I help you? What do you need to know? What, and you'll get it back. And like you said, a really important thing I think you mentioned on there is the realizing you're not alone element of it. So like you said, when you're speaking to other founders or seeing them talk about the experience, you're suddenly realizing that a lot of what you're experiencing is very similar, regardless of stage, size of company, vertical, anything like that. And I think that's humbling, but it's also kind of reassuring, right?
Yeah, massively reassuring. And it is a lonely road being a founder, especially if you don't have a co-founder. And I think that just keep talking to people, and putting yourself in different environments. And I know that can be really hard, because I don't live in London. I luckily moved house for the sole purpose to have easy to live in a commuter town, because I know that there are a lot more opportunities in London. I'm a Londoner. I grew up in London. However, if you do live more rurally, or you don't have access to kind of like networking hubs or investor hubs and things like that, it is challenging, but you will find a way. And there's
a lot of online things these days now as well, which is good.
You have to just put yourself out there. And I'm a true believer in the fact that if you put yourself out there, good things will come back. And it is a long journey. It's
Yeah, I think as well, a really good thing to do is to start in some ways almost like a founder diary online. To make your presence on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever platform of choice you have to be almost like exactly that, a diary. Because again, it's that similar thing of putting something out into the ether. And things will start coming back to you. And especially, like you said, if you are a little bit more isolated outside of the capital, but looking to kind of get ingratiated into some of these networks and meet similar people, that's a really great way of doing it, because of you're putting out those signals essentially to say, this is me, this is what I'm about, and others going through similar things, doing similar things will pick up on that, and that's a very good way of starting to build that network digitally. But not only that, but it's also starting to build something of a personal brand. That your voice will come through, your personality come through, and investors are very in tune to that as well. Because like you said, it's about personality, a lot of it. Is this person capable of bringing this business here, to the stage that we hope that it will get to? And so that's a really good indicator of that. And that's another reason why I like doing these episodes as well, because it's the opportunity to get people on and just be themselves, hopefully. I hope I can put people at ease enough that they can sort of relax and be themselves and just chat. Because and not just about the business, but about other things like we've talked about, because I think it reveals about the person, and that's what's appealing to people at the end of the day is personal stories. So hopefully that helps, whether that's to inspire another founder or to make a VC go or an angel go, I should maybe get in touch. I like this person, I like the cut of their jib.
Yeah, and I love that. Like I personally love helping people achieve. Like it's something I really thrive on is providing somebody with some sort of support that really, really impacts their life or something. And I think that's why I run my business, and that's why my business is very social focused. But also,
essentially that's the purpose of your businesses. They've always been to help others achieve a goal in fitness, but of course that ties massively into well-being overall. So yeah, it's no surprise that that's kind of ingrained in your personality to want to help others achieve things.
And I think my goal eventually, after selling and exiting multiple multi-million-pound businesses, is to become a founder's coach, and really like coach startups through the whole process, because
it's not what it's cracked up to be. If it makes you feel any better, but I think I told you this last time we spoke. When people ask me what I do for a living, I often tell them I get ignored for a living. that's pretty much what it's like to be coaching or advising founders. But occasionally something gets through. But
yeah, and I think you do have to have you have a great approach where you're like, it is what it is, and I love coaching, and I love helping people, and I love using my own experience to offer advice. And I do think that I'd be very well suited in an environment where I utilize my experience. I don't think this will happen for many years, like maybe in 40 years, but
no, but it's clearly in your DNA.
Yeah,
you can tell. Like, yeah, definitely.
And I do think like that's like, it's really important to be, as I said, generous with your knowledge. And obviously with considering like back up your expertise and make sure what you're saying is like valid, essentially. But if you're giving advice based on experience, it's your experience and you can't really get it wrong. So I think, and also knowing what you don't know is key to that, because
that's the hardest thing.
Yes, it is hard. Or just putting your hands up and being like, yeah, I don't know this. I'm going to go and find out, or I'm going to advise that you go and find somebody who does. So I think, it's all mixed in with everything, and everything works together, and eventually it will come together.
And so where are things at with the business currently? So, obviously you're raising now, but presumably you're sort of beginning to spin up. Actually, I know we talked about this before, but I actually can't remember. Are you beginning to spin up operating to some degree now, while raising, or where?
So I'm working with a development house in London, which I've worked with for other projects. And I mean, although we were supposed to have the beta version finished on the 15th of May, it's not ready yet. So I'm hoping that when I get back from my honeymoon, I will have a finalized version, and the goal is to really just subscribe as many users as possible. And we're also will be doing a pilot study with Audley retirement villages, over 3 of their villages, so 2 of the villages based in Kent and potentially 1 in London, so to just really test the functionality of the platform, but also gain an understanding as to maybe what's the next stage, what do users want, that we've completely ignored or we haven't even thought of. So there's an element of innovation, there's an element of really refining a really good and creating a really good and easy and simple product that people want to use, and ultimately helping people with and demonstrating that change and that impact. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment, with the business. So yeah.
Can you explain, because obviously you talked about what the main purpose of Mature Movies is and stuff, but can you explain what you envisage the user journey being like? So from one of your prospective users, they go on the platform. What happens? What do they do?
So when they come onto the platform, they can make a free account. In that account, it takes about 3 minutes, probably less, just depends on how fast your reading is, eyesight, all of those things. I mean, you can make screens bigger and smaller and text. I have to consider these things because of the age group. You fill out a survey. It's just like a tick box questionnaire at this point, and it then recommends the most appropriate classes based on your input. So we consider things like preferences. So are you only open to in-person classes, or are you open to in-person and online classes? And then there's also an element of health. So what health conditions do you have? Do you have COPD? Do you have you had a stroke? Have you got long COVID? Do you have a musculoskeletal condition that makes you unable to walk for long periods of time? Different things like that. So extract all that information, and then they have access to those recommendations. And the free version is a pay-as-you-go version. So you have your free account, and if you want to attend one class, you pay for that class, you access that class through the system, and you attend, and then your attendance is tracked, so you can keep track of how many classes you're attending, how regularly you're exercising, and eventually there'll be a lot more kind of measurable physical health elements to it, so that you can share that with your loved ones or your GP and things like that. And then the kind of the main subscription would be an unlimited subscription, where you have access to 5 main recommendations. You access all of those, and it's unlimited access to those recommendations, which could be online, in person. And there's a lot of evolutionary factors to the platform that a lot of investors ask about, or a lot of people interested, like, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And obviously I know now you have to keep it super simple, and you have to have kind of one main thing that you do right now, and that's what we do.
Do one thing really, really well. Yeah,
and that's our ambition. That's what we're trying to develop. Not get distracted by what other people suggest, and because I know that what a lot of other people suggest are really important, and it is something that we will implement maybe in a year's time, or in 2 years' time. But right now, it's all about focusing on this big gap in the market and offering this one thing that people need, and it makes it super simple for them to get this solution to their problem. So yeah, that's essentially the easy journey. I attend the class.
That's great. And what sort of range of types of classes do you envisage there being?
Rather than being kind of a general exercise platform, we want to be more health focused. So more things like cardiac rehabilitation. So it'd be a group class focused on people with potentially cardiac, who have experienced heart attacks in the past, or have long-term health conditions associated with their heart functioning. Other classes. So, I mean, most classes now that are available are just for older adults. There's no specification as to kind of like older adults are super diverse compared to younger adults. And when it comes to older adults, depending on how they've lived their life, they may be I've worked with 90-year-olds who are fully self-sufficient, fully physically independent, can get from the floor to standing super easily without fear of falling. And then I also work with 90-year-olds who are part-time wheelchair users or need to use a stair lift or don't have the ability to get in and out of a car by themselves. And I think that that's the real key element to what we offer is we target the classes based on your current abilities and health conditions, rather than just like dumping all over 60-year-olds in one group, because it just doesn't work like that. And it also doesn't work based on 60 to 70-year-olds and 70 to 80-year-olds and 80-year-olds to 90-year-olds, because a 60-year-old can have the same mobility levels as a 90-year-old, plus depending on the way that they've lived their life, genetic factors, and injury. So that's what we're trying to offer, is work with, we obviously provide this already, but to be able to scale, we have to work with other providers and other instructors. So like working with physio clinics and private clinics that offer Pilates for postural realignment and things like that. So we're also helping instructors and exercise specialists reach more people and reach more targeted people. So I believe that because the business model is so focused on helping people, that it will be successful, because it's a clear need, and we're providing a solution to that need. So
so I mean, would it be fair to say then you're always kind of have your ear to the ground in terms of new providers, right? That's always going to be a need. And what about providers that maybe don't have a setup for providing, say, online? Would that be something that you guys would sort of assist with? Is that what you're hoping to achieve as well?
So something that I've learned from a personal point of view is I love companies that go above and beyond, and I think that that's like you're just providing like much more value. I think you discussed this with, is it Gabriel in one of your other podcasts? It's just like give as much value as you can.
Oh, good. Someone watches this podcast.
And sorry, my dog's barking, which means my cleaner's here. And what was I saying? Yeah, value.
Going above and beyond.
Yeah, I think you have to go above and beyond to be able to run a successful, but to really
it's about being memorable, right?
It's about being memorable, but like optimizing the user experience, whether it's a provider or a subscriber. And people keep coming back. Like, I know that I will use a company. Like, if you have one bad experience, that can put you off for the rest, for the rest of your life. You'll just never use that provider, or you'll never buy that product again. Whereas if you've got if you feel like really valued as a customer or a provider, you want to keep giving people your money. You're like, I really, it's that whole give and get, that exchange. Biggie, sorry, I'm just gonna go and shut the door. Bear with.
That's all right.
So I think it's really important to offer that support. So providing instructors and really nurturing them to help them to grow themselves, and also reach more people. And I mean, most fit people within the fitness industry do what they do to help people. Obviously, money is very important. It makes the world go round. Does it? And a question for another time. But their sole purpose is to facilitate health, right?
So if they can reach more people on that mission, then they'll be up for that. So
yeah, and there are a lot of instructors who don't want to run massive businesses or don't want to work for corporate or commercial gyms and just want to help people, but they get bogged down by all of the admin and marketing side of things, and that's not what they signed up for. And the statistics around personal trainers and are like crazy. They're something like oh, I don't want to quote it because I'm not sure, but the majority of, let's say it's the majority, or like 50% of like personal trainers who qualify like leave the job within a year of starting, and which is mad. And I understand why, because you have to be super resilient, because you're not just providing a service, you're having to work on invoices, finances, marketing, tax, potentially, all of these things that like you don't want to do but you have to do if you want to be.
And it's a very high churn business as well, isn't it? You
Yeah.
have a lot of drop off. It's very seasonally influenced, and like you're battling people's laziness essentially, which I know for my poor personal trainer. He hasn't seen me for months. And we do message every now and then, and he's like, hey, how's it going, and all that, but like since having baby and stuff, it's just like it's the last thing on my mind. But and that's the thing, it is low priority for for a lot of people, which it shouldn't be, but it is. But that's interesting, and I suppose as well the other challenge for those in the sort of fitness space, especially those that cater for or specialize for older adults, it must be even more difficult for them to market to that very specific category of individuals. So partnering with an organization like yours would be kind of like,
we're taking away a lot of problems.
Yeah, like they're incredibly valuable for them to be able to say, well, we can hopefully start driving more of that to you. And I really agree with your sentiment about providing that experience. I used to say so I've said it in a couple of companies, but there's one company in particular I remember working with where I was running a sales team, and I had some involvement with the customer success team as well. And one of the things I always said to them was, you need to essentially conduct yourself in a manner when you first speak to one of our providers, so it's B2B, B2C, in such a way that they are excited to see your number come up on their screen the next time you're called. They should literally be looking, going, oh, brilliant, it's so-and-so from, you know what I mean? Like, that's the way it should be. You should be having a laugh with them. You should be going above and beyond. You should be giving under promising, over delivering, like all that kind of stuff. So that next time they see you, that the way they answer the phone, hey, Greg, how are you? Thanks for calling. And they literally drop what they're doing. And this used to happen. We'd have people running businesses to be like, I've got a customer, they're right here, but I've got to speak to you. Like, you know what I mean? They'd say, they can wait. I want to chat with you. I want to see how you're doing. Tell me what I can learn today. What should I be doing? That's the kind of stuff that's what you want. It's hard to achieve, but it can be done. Sure.
I agree. I mean, I think so far, Seed Legals who have been helping me, I feel that from them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like they go, like everybody I speak to, whether it's my account manager, whether it's the person who specializes in SCIS, they're always so buzzing and so supportive and like super like non-judgmental. And when I don't know something, they help me. And so as a result, I've been willing to kind of go on extra calls with them to give them feedback about their platform or feedback about the service, because I'm like, you've really helped me. I'm happy to really help you. And I recommended that Seed Legals to so many people just as a result of their customer service. And I mean, I haven't really utilized their service as much as I should, but I'm still really, really pleased with what I've achieved with them. And how it's the process, I think, as well. It's not just like, I need this, therefore I need something that gives me this super easily, but it's like a kind process, like enjoyable, as you said, like making sure you feel valued and making sure that people are giving you a positive experience. And I'm super sensitive to bad experience. So I know that I would never ever want to be treated in a certain way. So I would never ever treat someone in that way. And I mean, although this might not be business smart, it's a personal thing that I do. I always try to find a solution for someone, even if I can't help them. So example, we get inquiries from all across the UK, from children of older adults to older adults themselves, and sometimes I have to turn around and be like, I'm really sorry, we don't have anything in your area. And then I'll go away and I'll spend like 20 minutes researching something that they can have access to. And then I'll send them the references just so that they don't feel like they've like left. And to me, I'm going above and beyond, but not because I'm like, they're going to be a customer in the future. They probably won't be a customer in the future, but I've left a really good taste in their mouth. And I do what I do to help people at the end of the day. So it's not super business up because my time is really valuable and it's really, really precious, but I do it because I love what I do and I want to help people get
You might not be
better.
able to do that forever, but while you can, no
I
harm
will
in
do
doing
it.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly. Like I recently changed accountant, so I've just got a new accountant on board, and I did the usual thing of, we're online, you can go on the website, you put your kind of your project out there, and then people get in touch and bid for it. And I had a few people get in touch and sort of basically explain how they would work with me, etc., etc. And the one that stood out the most was a similar sort of thing. It was a woman who just absolutely stood out. She was, beaming down the phone. Like you could tell she had a big smile on her face, that she was happy, that she and thrilled to be speaking with me and wanting to have a conversation with me, learn about me and me as a person. We just talked. But more than anything else, she went absolutely above and beyond with the information that she provided. She said, "Oh yeah, I'm making note of that. I'm going to email some information about that over because I can tell you're interested in that." It was really, even no expectation that I was even going to pick her. Bless you. I'll pick her and her firm to work with me. But just she was like, "I'll send that over. It's not a problem. Like if you use it, fine. If not." And in the end, she quoted it was a higher quote than the others, but I was like, worth every penny. Yeah, because that's what I'm paying for. And since then, that was a couple of weeks ago, and since then, every time she calls, I'm like, I drop everything I'm doing and I'm picking up the phone because I want to speak with her. It's probably going to be a fun conversation at the very least, if not informative and helpful. So why not? And plus, if your accountant calls, you probably should answer the phone anyway. Yeah. Just in case, what I mean? They tell you, expect to knock on the door, shred everything, So, no, it's good advice to have from a customer service perspective. It's one of those things. I think it's one of those foundational principles as a founder that you should be laying as early on as possible. It starts with you, right? And hopefully, as you build your team out, then that will bleed into that function of a business, and they'll carry that vision of how you want to do things forward.
Yeah, setting standards and building a culture. And I think I'm super obsessed with Netflix. Not like the product, but like the way they run their company. Right. And if you've ever read No Rules, which is kind of like an HR perspective on like why they think Netflix is also super successful, but they tried like loads of different ways of managing staff and like how to optimize productivity and success and things like that. And what was I saying? Sorry, my brain is like, what? They were, what were we talking about before Netflix?
Customer success, service, and the importance of laying a foundation and
culture.
Yeah,
and culture. They talk about culture a lot. So there's an HR specialist, I can't remember her name, and then the CEO of Netflix. And a really good case study, that was it, was how they implemented the No Rules rule, which is essentially like there's not really many rules, or there aren't any rules, and you can take as much holiday as you like. So there's no holiday cap, for example. And what they saw was if the manager or the people that people look up to, the role models within the company, don't utilize that, other people won't. And so it's about creating that culture of like setting standards. And for example, if your manager is taking 3 weeks off, your team members are more likely to do that. Whereas if they're not taking any time off, they're also not the rest of the team aren't taking any time off. And I think it's about that. It's like it's all about role modeling and setting that example for others. And once you do that, you are creating and instilling like the foundational culture of a company. And that's something that I'm really, really hot on, is me as a founder, is like, if I learn what I really, really want to value within a company, when I have 100 employees, that's the type of culture I want to instill in them. And I mean, I work as a consultant in hospitals, and I go into the offices, and this is like private healthcare, and the culture is like super toxic around certain things. And I'm like a really clear example is leaving early if you've done all your work. Like, I never understand why people make their employees leave at 5 p.m. if all of their work's done by 3 p.m. I'm just like, if the work's done, the work's done. Reward that individual for doing what they've done in a far speedier amount of time. Don't just make them sit there and wait and watch the clock for 2 hours, because it comes with so much more, like resentment, frustration, and then that impacts on productivity and the work outcomes. So yeah, culture is really, really important.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's funny you mentioned that about the sort of sticking around when you work something. I worked with a founder, I'm not going to say his name, a couple of years ago, who let's just say we discovered we had very different approaches at some point working with one another, and decided to call it a day. But one thing that kind of was a huge red flag for me, he had a brick and mortar business, as well as this other project that he was that I was helping with, which was a SaaS business. And in this brick and mortar business, he made his employees do just that. It was like, if he had, let's say, five of them on shift and it was absolutely dead, he would say, well, your shift finishes at this time, so the cleaning list needs to be done, doing this. And when I asked him about it, I was like, why don't you just send them home? There's no one here. His response was, I'm paying them to do a job. I don't pay them to stand around and do nothing. So, well, then just send them home. Like, you know what I mean? It was a power trip, essentially. And
yeah, power.
Yeah, that's what it was. He enjoyed the power he had over these people. But the other thing that's really interesting, or what you said as well, is it's like you set the example as a leader. I mean, I like breaking things down into their simplest forms, right? Like we talked about sales, that going for funding. It's basically sales and marketing. What is sales and marketing? It's basically communication. Leadership isn't rocket science. I for example, in my consulting, have done a lot with social psychology, especially with group psychology. A group of people together, if one person is a leader, naturally, individual, bless you, you're allergic to my nonsense about social psychology. Naturally, people mimic the behaviors of those that are in positions of power. That's something we've always known about human behavior. We see it in children; they mimic the adults around them, and in adults, we mimic the individuals around us that we trust the most to have our best interests at heart, right? Or at least should, in theory, because it's a survival thing. It's really not that complicated, So when you think about it, instilling a culture. That's you again. Hay fever. Yeah. I've been sneezing nonstop as well recently. It's just not rocket science. That's what I'm saying. It's just you're going to. Of course, it's going to be. There's a reason why we call it leading by example. It's the clues in the title. Being an effective leader means you have to be aware that your behaviors are going to be not only scrutinized but also mimicked. Absolutely, you're setting the example. It's really not that complicated. So when people say, how do you set a good culture, or when I've been asked to come in to examine culture before and help with morale and things like that, I'm saying, well, the buck stops with you. Like, if you've got a bad culture, there's a reason for that, and more likely than not, the behaviors are stemming from what you're doing. So it's one thing for you to say on a big board somewhere, this is our company culture, we do X, Y, and Z. But if you're not actually participating in that in any meaningful way and contributing to it, it's absolutely fucking pointless. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you went with Netflix,
I'm with you.
because of they're not without controversy as well.
Yeah, but I like the controversy, and I mean, I need to kind of get back up to date with kind of what they're doing now, but
not very well.
No rules book. Okay, so the no rules book's really, really interesting, and that's like that. It's a very clear example of how they learned from their mistakes. And when they were starting off and things like that. And I mean, I think this is a conversation for a whole other episode, in a sense that as a company grows, you reach different levels of culture, and there are different, it's like a massive, I don't know if this word makes sense in this context, multiverse of elements within larger organizations when you're as big as Netflix. So when they were starting off, like, really, really interesting how they've optimized productivity and optimized creativity and innovation and things like that. And I'm a big believer in your staff, or I don't like calling people staff, like your team is as important, is essentially the most important part of the company, is who's running it. And no matter who or what position the person is within the company, every single person provide something, and like that's the type of company I want to run when I've got lots of team members that I need to be supporting, managing, advising, and I think it's also about creativity in the way that the mind works, and like recognizing that work is not just work, it's life. Like, people spend most of their time working their whole life, and you can't ignore the fact that people have other things except for work. And when you understand that, you can really nurture somebody's work capacity and work outcomes in a short and long term of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to clarify what I said about Netflix there, in case I start getting any hate in the comments, when I say they're not doing well, I mean more, I don't know about culturally, and with all of the stuff you're talking about, maybe they're doing fine, but in terms of financially, I think they're struggling a little bit. That's what I meant more than anything else. What's interesting is I actually spoke with someone recently who may actually be featuring as a guest on here at some point, who runs an agency that specializes specifically in consulting on things to do with culture and HR and things like that. And we connected very much on a very similar stage, which is his sweet spot, which is also mine when it comes to culture, which you alluded to, which is the growth stage, right? Which is incredibly challenging, because you've got generally an established, usually fairly intimate startup culture, and usually around the Series A level is when things get very, very difficult, because of, like you said, you then suddenly you're creating additional ecosystems within your business very quickly with a lot of new people. And so what you said there, very well intentioned, right? But it's not manageable at scale. Like, you can't directly manage that culture and set the tone anymore. You now need to bring in advocates of your culture and your vision for the company. And of course, people always bring their own spin to things. So they're never going to be clones of you. They're never going to do things exactly the same as you. They're gonna put their own spice on it. And it's very difficult to do, especially in growth stage, because you're expected to do that very quickly as well. So, you're given a lot of money and you're told, right, within the next 6 months to a year, you need to grow to this size. Like, you don't have the time to really vet people sometimes the way you should. I've seen it firsthand. And, people who have been hired into leadership positions that really shouldn't have been, because they had the credentials on paper, but then what they've done to the cultural side of things is hugely detrimental. And I think at that stage, actually, which is what this guy and I really clicked on, was there should be a heavier emphasis, in fact, on hiring for culture at that stage than for the credentials that appease to VCs. Yeah, because quite often it's bring in the person that's done it before. Now you've got the money. So no. Bring in the person that's going to fit into the culture and they can grow into it. That's more important.
And also, and I think it's the personality is key, and like personability and likability of an individual. And I think actually ego comes into there. It's like that whole power ego element of a managerial position, where if you come in like with this like power hungry attitude, your colleagues are just not gonna respond. They're not gonna engage. Like, I wouldn't. I'd just be like, sorry, I'm not here for this. Like I don't believe in hierarchy. And I think I believe in leadership, absolutely, but I don't believe in hierarchy. And I think it's really, really key to set that like the standard of expectations, obviously. And once you have those expectations, it's about really like nurturing and conditioning and growing the culture through an individual's personality. And I mean, I see it in my partner. Like he just really, really thrives in his industry just because he's a really likable person. And I'm not like dissing his like intellect, because he is a smart person, but he could be like had the same level of intelligence but like less likability, and he just wouldn't be as successful as he is, because what really sets him apart is his ability to work with every single person on his team, and not be part of
that is probably the best skill that anyone can have in any career, is be easy to work with. It's an incredibly underrated skill that I don't think people really consider, but you know, it should be top of mind. Be easy to work with, because so many people are fucking hard to work with. You know what I mean? Look, we should wrap up. So really quickly before I let you go, maybe tell the viewers, listeners, where they can find you, and yeah, what to expect if they were to follow you on social. I put your LinkedIn profile up at the beginning, and so maybe how they can support you and follow the story.
Perfect. So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. And if you ever do want to chat, just add me and say that you listen to the podcast, because it'd be nice to know who's listened. So that's just Rosaria Barreto on LinkedIn. And then in terms of socials, I'm pretty much everywhere, but all my socials are business orientated. So I don't really have personal socials. So if you want to find out more about falls prevention and exercise in later life, then you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. But just search my name and you'll find me. Just put me into Google and it should be straightforward from there. I've got quite good SEO for my name.
Awesome, brilliant. Well, look, I'm looking forward to us catching up again soon. Hopefully with slightly better internet connection, or not a melting laptop. And then maybe we can go in a bit more detail and nuance on what we were just ending on there. But yeah, good luck with everything. Keep up the amazing work. Enjoy the wedding.
Thank you.
All the stress will be a distant memory, I'm sure. Congratulations again. And yeah, my best to your husband to be and the family.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg, and have a lovely week. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for coming. Enjoy the weather. See you soon.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you for watching and/or listening. Please like, subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments below.